It's music theory. Online, let's learn some theory. Online, by watching modules. Online, with music theory. Online.
Hello everyone and welcome to Module 2. Today we're moving from major and minor scales to learning about modes. The origins of what we commonly refer to as the church modes were originally called plainsong. These were organized by Pope Gregory I, who was the Bishop of Rome from 590 to 604, and he's really credited for having ordered the simplification and cataloging of music assigned to specific celebrations in the church calendar. Gregorian chant was named after him. The resulting body of music is the first to be written in a system that became the modern musical notation. In general, the chants were learned by following the given example orally, which took many years of experience. Here's an example of early notation that would have been based on the modes. Notice that there are 4 lines. There's no clef. However, the notes which were called neumes show pitch, direction, and duration. This notation is not nearly as accurate as our modern notation system, but it still relied heavily on the oral tradition. Like major and minor scales, the modes have 8 consecutive notes. They ascend and descend through a particular pattern. The first and last notes of the modes have the same letter name. The first note of the mode is the principal note and it's called the final, whereas in major and minor keys we have a tonic. Because there's no tonic, modes do not have keys or technical degrees. Normally only white keys are used, however they can be transposed to any note. By the 11th century, medieval church used 4 different authentic or original modes. Each of these authentic or original modes has a different pattern of tones and semitones. These were identified by numbers and were later given names. The names of the first 4 modes are Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, and Mixolydian. The Dorian mode, or the modern Dorian mode, corresponds to the white keys on the piano from D to D, which is why it is frequently called the D Dorian mode. The pattern is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, and whole step, or tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, tone. This is what it sounds like. You can transpose the Dorian mode to any key. Just remember to adjust the tones and semitones or whole steps and half step patterns so that they are the same as if you started your scale on D. Here we can see how the Dorian mode beginning on C compares to the minor scales we know that begin on C. Here's what these 4 scales sound like. The Dorian mode is not exactly like any minor scale, but it has characteristics of all the forms of the minor scale. I always think of the Dorian mode as a minor scale with the 6th and the 7th lowered. As I said earlier, and as we saw with the previous slide, all modes can be transposed. You can transpose the Dorian mode to any key. Just remember to adjust the tones and the semitones or the whole steps and the half step patterns so that they're the same as they are on D. The easiest way to correctly write the D Dorian or any mode is to write out the mode using only the white keys. Then you can determine where the tones and semitones or whole steps and half steps are found. This chart simply shows you that the Dorian mode can be written on any key. It just requires the addition of sharps and or flats to achieve the correct order of tones and semitones. This is the same idea as we saw with the major and minor scales. The order of tones and semitones is what makes a major scale sound like a major scale. As you move away from C major, you require sharps and or flats to maintain the tones and semitones. It's the same with the modes. You'll notice that this chart has a letter name in front of the word Dorian, just like there's a letter name in front of the word major in major keys. Here are two examples of music that has been written in the D Dorian mode. You may recognize them. One is a Scarborough Fair, and What Do You Do with the Drunken Sailor? I'll play Scarborough Fair for you. And here is What Do You Do with the Drunken Sailor? The Phrygian mode is the second mode, and it can be played on the keyboard from E to E. It has a minor sound with semitones between the first and the second, and the 5 and 6. The Phrygian mode is similar to the natural minor scale with that second lowered. This is what the Phrygian mode sounds like. Here is the C Phrygian mode. We see a semitone between 1 and 2, which is why we need a D flat. We need a tone from the second to the third degree, which is why we need an E flat. A semitone between 5 and 6, which is why the A is flat, and a tone from A flat to B flat. Notice how it's similar to C natural minor scale with that second note lowered. This is what the C Phrygian mode sounds like. Like we saw with the Dorian mode, the Phrygian mode can be played beginning on any note within the octave. The final, which is the first note, is before the mode name. Here's a folk song written in the E Phrygian mode. I'll play it for you. The Lydian scale can be described as a major scale with the 4th degree raised a semitone. For example, it's like a C major scale with an F sharp. Here we see 3 forms of the Lydian scale: the F Lydian, the C Lydian, and the E Lydian. Again, it's the order of tones and semitones that gives the Lydian mode its unique sound. Here's the F Lydian scale. You'll notice that the 4th note is B natural. If this was the F major scale, that would be a B flat. So it's the same as the major scale with the 4th raised. Here's what the F Lydian sounds like. Here we have the C Lydian mode. Notice the F sharp, and this is what the C Lydian scale sounds like. Next we have the E Lydian scale. In the E Lydian, we have the 4th note, which is A, raised to A sharp. In the key of E major, we would have F sharp, G sharp, C sharp, and D sharp. And in addition, we have the raised 4th note. This is what the E Lydian sounds like. Here we have an example of music that's written in the Lydian mode. It begins on C, and it has the F, which is the fourth, raised. I'll play it for you. Do you recognize this? It's the theme from The Simpsons. You'll find that the modes are often used in music that you hear every day. The Mixolydian mode is like the major scale with the seventh note lowered. The order of tones and semitones in the Mixolydian scale is tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, or whole step, half step, whole step, half step, whole step. Another way to think about the Lydian mode is that it's built on the dominant of the major key. G Mixolydian is built on the dominant of C, and it shares C major's key signature. So the C Mixolydian scale is related to the key of F major. And it sounds like this. The D Mixolydian mode is related to the key of G major because D is the dominant of G major. And it sounds like this. The E Mixolydian mode is related to the key of A major because E is the dominant of A major, and it sounds like this. You and I by Lady Gaga is written in the A Mixolydian mode. It uses a key signature which is common for modes. However, notice here that the G, which is the seventh degree, is lowered with an accidental. That's what makes this A Mixolydian. Here's what it sounds like. The Aeolian mode is the same as the natural minor scale. I'll play the Aeolian scale for you. This excerpt is in B Aeolian. Here's what it sounds like. Because the Aeolian mode is the same as the natural minor scale, it doesn't really sound different to our ears because we're used to the natural minor scale. The Locrian mode may be considered to be a minor scale with the second and the fifth degrees lowered a semitone. The Locrian mode is also, you can consider it to be a scale beginning on the seventh degree of any major scale. So the B Locrian mode starts on B and it contains the same notes as the C major scale. The E Locrian mode starts on E and it contains the same notes as the F major scale. The G Locrian mode starts on G and contains the same notes as the A flat major scale. The F sharp Locrian mode starts on F sharp and contains the same notes as the G major scale. This is the easiest of all the modes for us, the Ionian mode, which has tones and semitones that are the same as the major scale. How easy is that? The Ionian mode is from C to C, and it has semitones between the third and the fourth degree of the scale and the seventh and eighth degree of the scale. Here we see how all of the modes are formed in C major. You really need to know the order of these modes so that you can then transpose them correctly to any key. I'll play all of these modes for you. This little saying will help you remember which modes begin on which note. You may wonder why we don't begin with the Ionian mode since it begins on C. The Ionian mode is one of the later modes, which is why it is last, whereas the Dorian mode was one of the first modes. If you memorize "Don't play loud music at lunch, Iggy," then you'll always be able to have the modes in the correct order. Don't is Dorian, D to D. Play is Phrygian, E to E. Loud is Lydian, F to F. Music is Mixolydian, and it's G to G. At is Aeolian, A to A. Lunch is Locrian, B to B. And Iggy is Ionian, C to C. Can you name these modes and the final? The first example is B Locrian. The second example is D Dorian. The third example is E Phrygian. And the last example is F Lydian. Remember to always use the order of tones and semitones to decide which mode is correct. It's easy when there are no accidentals. Just memorize our pattern. Don't play loud music at lunch, Iggy. It may seem strange that we start with the D Dorian when we're using the modes, but remember there's a good reason for that. The first mode that was used was Dorian. Remember that in the time of Pope Gregory there were no major and minor scales. By trying to start on C is taking an older tradition and trying to make it fit into a more modern system. I really hope you understand how modes are formed. Remember, you can always write out the mode using the white keys to see where the semitones fall. And as always, if you need more help, please contact me. I'm here to help you every step of the way. I hope to see you at Theory Club. Have a super duper week. Bye now.
It's music theory online. Let's learn some theory online by watching modules online with music theory online.